myself more. Okay, I don't need anything.
Well, good evening, and welcome to our COB Speaker Series keynote, an open conversation on inclusion with Mr. Randall Tucker. My name is Michael Biesing, and I serve as Dean of the College of Business. Our hope for tonight's program is to engage in an open and honest conversation about inclusion in creating space, particularly within our JMU community, where all are welcome, valued, and feel a genuine sense of belonging. Our keynote this evening is Mr. Randall Tucker, a 2000 BBA graduate with majors in hospitality and tourism management and marketing. Randall is the Executive Vice President and Chief Inclusion Officer for MasterCard, where he is responsible for aligning the company's global diversity and inclusion initiatives with the corporate business strategy to ensure that every employee has the same opportunity to reach their greatest potential. Before joining MasterCard, Randall served as head of inclusion and diversity for both Darden Restaurants and Starwood Hotels and Resorts worldwide. Prior positions include various sales and human resource roles at Marriott International. Randall was named Adweek's Pride Star honoree. He has been featured in Forbes, Fortune, Quartz, Business Insider, and he regularly speaks at key industry events including Money 2020, Financial Times, Moral Money, the World Bank, Financial Alliance for Women, among others. He also serves as the World Economic Forum Steering Committee for Partnership for Global LGBTQI+ Equality. Randall serves on the Hart School Advisory Board at JMU. He has been an invited lecturer at Georgetown University School for Continuing Studies and holds a Six Sigma Black Belt certification. Randall splits his time between New York City and Williamsburg with his husband, Raymond Berry, who is with us tonight. And it is now my pleasure to present you Mr. Randall Tucker.
Thank you. I'm pretty short, so hopefully everyone can see me. Can you see me? Yeah. Okay. Got it. Dean Busing was my TA when I was taking COB many, many moons ago. So I've seen him grow into the Dean of the College of Business, which has been amazing. Hello, JMU family. It feels good to be back on campus and to have this opportunity. It's great to see each of your smiling faces within the crowd. Even if it's by the skin of your teeth, we survived the last 2.5 years. And not everyone was so lucky. And for that, we should all give ourselves a round of applause. Well, that didn't sound so exciting. Give yourselves another round of applause. I would like to thank Dean Busing for allowing me in his house, and Dr. Tubman and Dr. Henderson for their opportunity to get in front of you this evening. And thank you to my fellow Hart School Advisory Board members that may or may not be in the room. Thank you for supporting me. I know that they were coming over. I've been working out of the London office, and I came back mainly for this event. I'm headed back on Monday, but I wanted to take the time out of my schedule to give my thoughts on topics that are really important to me. JMU holds a very special place in my heart. It's the place that I learned it's not just about what you do, but how you do it. About being well-rounded, about being smart while having good manners. It's a place where I learned to challenge assumptions about myself and others through self-exploration, meeting new people, and being challenged by professors to do and be better, and actually trying out new things as well. It's also the place where I created long-lasting friendships, where those friends have now turned into family, crossing boundaries of gender, race, economics, as well as family makeup. It's also the place where I met my husband now of 27 years, right over in Hoffman Hall, less than 2 weeks after our freshman year. And just keeping it real, it's a place where it taught me how to party with everyone. From the extremes of KDR parties with naked and snow angels, I remember, to university-sponsored receptions at Joshua Wilton House. They all had beer and wine, and they all had me stumbling back to my dorm room and wearing sunglasses on Sunday mornings in D Hall. But if we're here, and if we're being honest today and having an honest dialogue and a deeper discussion, there was more to the story about my experience at JMU that I rarely talk about. It was the place for the first time that I'd been put in situations where I was the only one that looked like me in group settings and totally felt like an outsider. No one was being mean, no one was being rude. It just felt like a conversation had already been started that I just wasn't a part of. In order for me to survive, I had to make the first move to make friends, and I had to make the first move to connect with some of my professors. Right off of Duke Drive was the first time someone had ever called me the N-word. It was like something out of a bad movie, quite honestly. Guys driving in the back of a pickup truck yelling hateful language. My friends with me tried to ignore what they had heard. Not acknowledging was their way of not wanting guilt by association. It was the silence from my friends that hurt me the most. Now, I'm no shrinking violet. Trust me, I am no shrinking violet at all. So I had a come to Jesus meeting with them, and it was a growth moment for all of us to better understand each other's perspectives and how to be greater allies for each other. And right behind Klein's ice cream shop was the first time I'd ever been stopped by the cops. I had just gotten my hair cut and was walking back to campus. Two cop cars, there was 4 cops, pulled me over and interrogated me. I'm walking, mind you. They said they were looking for a dark black male, 6 feet tall. Now, you know I'm not 6 feet tall. I'm every bit of 5'8". Bald head, I had hair at the time. And the person had stolen something. Not until I showed my Jack card did they immediately leave me alone. It was as if they had seen a ghost. They jumped in their cars and left. It was many years after these incidents that I'd ever talked about them. For some reason, I carried the weight of the shame, the guilt, the feeling of having done something wrong. But as I matured as an adult, I grew to understand none of these things were my fault, and I had to forgive myself for feeling less than. But honestly, I would not trade any of my experiences at JMU as they helped to shape who I am today as a person as well as a leader. Now, if you were to cut me down like a tree, you would notice that I have over 40 rings around. Means I'm over 40. Which essentially means I'm old and I don't have a filter at this point. There's no need. No need. Because I've seen and done too much. During our time together, I would like to share with you top-of-mind thoughts on 2 topics that are near and dear to me. 1, career lessons that may help you navigate your first 5 years after graduation. And then 2, explore why the heck should you even care about something called diversity, equity, and inclusion, and provide you with some foundational tips on how to be an inclusive leader. And of course, we will leave time for questions and comments, as well as time for debate, since we are in a college setting. So let's get started. Career lessons the first 5 years out of college. I may be stating the obvious, but how about graduating? Just graduate. Don't let anything or anyone derail you from getting across that stage. You have worked too hard to miss this important and necessary milestone in your life. I encourage you to write down your career and life goals in 5-year increments. Prep work for this requires you to be both honest as well as authentic with yourself. Post them somewhere you can read them every day. I call it subconscious intentionality. You will start to recognize your actions will naturally gravitate to making those goals a reality, even when you're not thinking about them. This is a touchy one. If you want to be married, don't wait. Just do it. Now let me clarify. If you're in a serious relationship, a long-term relationship in college, and the person treats you with respect and is supportive of your career aspirations and is eager to be just as successful as you, marry them. There is nothing like starting off broke together and building a life together. But if that person you are with is not supportive and disregards your goals and your aspirations and kind of lazy, drop them like a hot potato. Your first 5 years out of college should feel like a scratchy wool sweater. It's called growing pains. And if it doesn't feel awkward and painful, something is wrong. And you aren't growing. You should expect to work long hours, both on the holidays and on the weekends. You should expect to be sorting through crappy work assignments and feeling meaningless. You should expect to be making a lot of new mistakes, and getting reprimanded. And you should expect to be baffled by not getting a pat on the shoulder or praise for doing something good. When these things are happening to you, you are on the right path. Success is not an Instagram filter that you can just push and it just happens. Be respectful and courteous to everyone you work with. From the office cleaning crew to the CEO, you never know who is in a relationship with whom, nor do you know who can help you get to your next job or promotion. Do more than what's required and expected. What's in your job description is the minimum. Make yourself more valuable by finding ways to make life easier for your boss. And lastly, build a career board of directors. Identify 3 or 4 people from different backgrounds, whether it be age and race and gender, that are smarter, that are older, and more experienced in your field to be your mentor. Now, I learned these things both the easy way as well as the hard way. And they probably will, and they apply to any career path you take. Now, as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, I've been a student of this work for over 20 years, because you never get it. It's something that you have to hone year after year, because life and circumstances of the world change all the time. And I had the opportunity to lead this work for both large U.S. and global multinational organizations, spanning from the hospitality to the payments and technology industries. Organizations that find my leadership profile appealing desire real change in a way that they are thinking about diversity, want someone that can create and drive global strategy, someone that feels comfortable talking to the back of the house kitchen staff to presenting in front of a board of directors, and someone not afraid to challenge thinking at any level of the organization. Now, it's a topic that instantly causes 90% of people to fall in one of 3 buckets. 1, highly supportive and a champion for progress. 2, wishes the topic would just go away because it's for those people over there, and it feels like we are lowering our standards, and it won't be easy for them to succeed if others do. Or somewhere in the middle. Big picture, they know it's right to create an equal playing field for everyone, but it feels too big and sensitive of a topic to tackle. And there's too many potential potholes to navigate. Now, honestly, I'm not here to judge what bucket you fall into, nor am I saying that one category is better than the other, based on where a person is in their life journey. But what I am saying is that if one wants to be considered a relevant strategic business leader that is credible on a global stage, that truly lives up to organizational value and beliefs, that seeks to hire and retain the best and brightest talent, that desires to keep all your employees engaged and productive, that tries to ensure money, ideas, innovations aren't left on the table for competitors to grab. If any of these things apply to you, you may want to reimagine or evolve your thoughts on the topic. At the end of the day, the work that I do across the world, from all of its complexity, from Singapore to Sao Paulo, boils down to giving leaders data, counsel, and insights to make informed decisions, to maximize their ability to problem solve and innovate by having diverse perspectives at all levels of the organization. And my fun part that I absolutely love, because I have this project management and Six Sigma background, is pulling systems apart and putting them back together again to ensure everyone has the opportunity to be hired and promoted, to be a supplier for goods and services within an organization, to buy our products and see themselves in a brand's advertising, and to reap the benefits of corporate community outreach and philanthropy. But what I cannot do, unfortunately, is make people value, respect, and see others as equal. It's the hardest part of my job. And I'll say that one more time. The hardest part of my job is that I cannot make someone value, respect, and see others as equals. So before I go any further, let's align on operational definitions. Because when we say the terms diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'll ask any of you, you will give different answers. So this is my philosophy around the work that I've led in other organizations, and have evolved those definitions along the way. So when I think about diversity, all the things that make us both similar as well as different, the things you can see about each other and things you can't see about each other. Examples might include your gender, your ethnicity, your thinking style, your sexual orientation, educational background, where you grew up, the language is spoken, any characteristic. None of us is a carbon copy of each other. Therefore, we're all diverse, and no one is left out of the definition, because we need everyone's perspective, not just a few, but everyone. Inclusion, I see it as a leadership skill, not to just hold hands and be nice to each other, but a leadership skill on how leaders are able to build and sustain diverse teams. None of us are born inclusive, and I don't care who you look like or where you came from, none of us is born a diverse leader. It's something that you hone, a leadership muscle, just like financial acumen, as well as presentation skills. In equity, ensuring systems work for everyone, whether it be HR, people systems, procurement systems, marketing and sales systems. Now, when JMU releases you out into the world to conquer and lead, which it will, there are a few foundational inclusion leadership skills that I want you to remember. Talk is cheap. Your actions speak louder than words. If you can't back up your mantra of I support diversity with tangible proof points, you are not going to be seen as a credible or an authentic leader by many pockets of your organization and employee base. Hire a diverse team of people when you have the opportunity. Require HR to give you a diverse slate of candidates to choose from. Be empathetic to colleagues and employees with backgrounds and life circumstances different from yours. Some systems have intentionally left out certain communities or casually forgotten historical facts. Everyone did not start off with the same resources, access, and opportunity. Get to know the individual and not assume you know them based on a stereotype. Give honest and respectful feedback to each employee. We tend to say, you're doing great, to people that don't look like us, but in the long run, we're stunting their career growth and development. It's literally killing people with kindness. Seek out missing perspectives in decision making. Ask your team, what am I missing? It's okay to be humble as a leader. And finally, if you don't know how to treat someone, ask them. They will never steer you wrong. I'm going to leave you with a short story. My first job out of college was as an employment marketing project manager at Marriott headquarters in Bethesda, Maryland. I absolutely loved my job, but it was really, really tough. And I loved my new apartment in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and living on my own, not having roommates or anything like that. I love living near my husband, my soon-to-be husband, as well as college friends, and I was content. 8 months later, my world came crashing down when I was laid off due to a downturn in the economy. However, I had built strategic relationships, I had a really good work ethic, and people liked me. And so they wanted to keep me. So they gave me an offer to be a sales manager in Park Ridge, New Jersey, at the Park Ridge Marriott. They told me I had 2 days to decide if I wanted to move to a place I had never been and leave everyone I knew. I remember vividly going back to my apartment, running a bath, and crying my eyes out while sitting in the tub, in the dark. I remember that. But after the tears and the emotion, I had to be an adult. And I had to make an adult decision. Was I going to stay in my comfort zone, or would I take a scary leap of faith? I took the leap of faith and moved to New Jersey. Because of that scary decision and a lot of hard work over the last 20 years, it triggered a cascade of doors opening in my life that I could have never imagined, quite honestly. But it was sparked by hardship as well as unexpected life events. I would not be able to share any of this stuff that I'm talking to you about unless I made that pivotal career move and decision. Life is about choices and your decisions. JMU's school motto and slogan are knowledge is liberty and be the change. Now that you have greater knowledge of what to expect your first 5 years after graduation and have the foundation to be an inclusive leader, be the change that JMU wants you to be. Be the change that your family wants you to be. But most importantly, be the change that you want to be. Thank you. We'll have Q&A and comments and questions. Happy to answer anything. This is the fun part. So anything on your mind, bold topics, have at it.
And so what we're asking is that if you have any questions, just to come up to this mic. We don't necessarily have any mics to go around. But any questions that you guys have, please come on up. Please don't be hesitant. We were very serious and sincere by labeling this an open conversation about inclusion. We really want you guys to walk away with this idea, this sense, this knowledge of what exactly does it mean to be an inclusive individual, especially when we talk about this community called JMU. So this is really for you guys. And so by all means, take advantage of somebody like Randall. So please, coming up with any questions that you guys may have. Don't be shy.
Yeah, please don't. No, that's the worst thing you can do in a college campus is not ask a question.
Because we all have a voice. One thing I will add as well, I tell this to my students in my diversity class, is that when it comes to this thing called DEI, especially because we are at a predominantly white institution, oftentimes I think some of you feel as though you don't have a say in this conversation. And I want to dismiss that for you all and make sure that you all understand that you have a voice and your voice matters and that we all have something to say about this topic. So again, I open the floor to you all.
Or it doesn't even have to be on us. It could be on anything.
Anything. There you go.
I'll ask a question. I don't need the mic so loud.
Yes, it is.
So, how does one exactly get into career in diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Because you talked about your early career, kind of going into hospitality and into sales. Like, at what point do you sort of make the transition, and what skills are necessary? It's a relatively new career field in the grand scheme of things, right? If you're advising students on how to go into a career, how did you make that transition?
That's an interesting story. So, that is a story. So, there were, in the days of the horse and buggy, there was no diversity kind of like class that you take to do this job. So as I said, I had sales and marketing experience as well as HR experience. And when I moved to that role at the partner Marriott, it was right after 9/11. And most of you weren't even born at that time. But I knew that I didn't want to go to funeral homes and churches drumming up business for the hotel. So what I did was, there was this new company called Starwood Hotels, W Brand, Westin Sheraton, that they were hiring. And so I threw my name in the hat for a role that was 3 levels above where I was. But I did have Marriott experience on my resume, and that company wanted people from Marriott to join that company. And so I was in the interview room, and it was a glass room that everyone could see you while you were being interviewed. And it was a Six Sigma role, which I didn't have Six Sigma background at all at that point. But I had the night before crammed and crash studied, like I knew, like you could do that overnight. And I was in the room and I was drawing on the board and I was doing this kind of crazy thing. And there was this woman that went past, she was like, who the heck is that? Like, hey, what is he doing, first of all? And she asked the recruiter, was I going to get the job? And she was like, no, of course not. He's not going to get that job. But she said, I want to talk to him. She was the head of diversity, communications, and community affairs for the company. And by the end of the day, I had my first diversity, communications, and community affairs job. Now, that was an anomaly. I literally was acting out in this room. Someone saw me and was like, I have no idea, who is this person? Can they do this? Now, my background actually lended very well to that. What I will say, that if someone wants to get into this role now, there are courses that you can take in order to do it. So I know that there are some online courses. I know that there's opportunities within universities and schools, but they have it as a major or a minor. What really helped me was not having any of that. It was the business background that I had, that I brought to the table, that was really impressive for them. So strategic development, project management, financial acumen, being able to get in front of anyone at any level and not being afraid. Those are the things that they wanted, because this person has to be changed every day. And you know, and you're hearing people that don't want to hear what you have to say. And so that was my journey in doing that. So, but it looks different for me.
I'm probably also loud enough, but I'll use the microphone. So a lot of companies now are making a transition and being more vocal about trying to be inclusive, and they're promoting diversity and equity. So how do you find an authentic company who's really embracing the change?
Again, it goes back to proof points. I was very leery of companies that reached out to me when George Floyd was murdered. You know, all of a sudden you want to have a diversity and inclusion person show up. Why do you care now? There are many black men that have been murdered on the streets, and so why now is it so important? And so I think it goes back to the intent. Every conversation that I have with a CEO or someone on the leadership team, if I'm interviewing for an organization, I literally, in my one-on-ones, what do you want? Why is this role so important to you? Because if it's something as a facade, where you just want me to go out and shake hands and kiss babies, I'm not that person. But if you really want change, and you really want to see movement from, it was a mess and it looks like, you know, some abstract painting to like something that has form to it, that's the person that I want. And I've had many conversations. So again, it's into the leadership team and understanding where their head's at and what they want to do. That's the kind of a litmus test that you kind of have to get. And I have a hunch, because I've been doing it all the time. I have a hunch as to, you know, what the motive is.
How does somebody who doesn't have your experience and exposure see through that?
Well, you ask the question, what do you want? And that will tell you the answer, because they'll say, oh, I want you to do networking affinity groups. Or I want you to make sure that you do these surveys. Or they'll say, it's kind of open. I don't know what we want, but we know that we want someone in the role. That's not an answer, because you would never go to the head of marketing, or to the head of finance, or to any other head of sales and ask a question, oh, you know, it's kind of nebulous and I don't know what I want. You wouldn't do that. And so I have been in those situations where I have major companies that I have said no, and I'm really happy to be at MasterCard that actually we're on a journey, we're not there yet, but the leadership team is totally invested.
First off, thank you for coming here today. Thank you for the trip to finance. Huge commitment, so thank you.
Okay.
My question is, how do you, so it seems to me that like the first argument that everyone hears for DEI is like it's good for profits. I think there's like all these correlations in society between diverse boards and profits and all that stuff. So how do you go further than that and build a connection to the moral, the societal benefits as well? And convey that to the team for organization.
Right. So that's true. You always hear like if you have more board representation, then your company's going to be amazing. Okay. I think there are two buckets that I put it into. One, it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to give everyone an opportunity to succeed. And sometimes we forget that. That's the base of it all. It's the right thing to do. JMU has the whole university is built on doing the right thing. So we already know that. So we already have that ingrained in us. So that's the first kind of bucket that you put it in. The other piece, it is good for business. That diversity of thought, when you have difference around the table, and you can pick up something and look at it at different angles and say, oh, from my perspective, I see this. Oh, from my perspective, you get to the best solution. You get to innovate, you get to problem solve. And without that, if everyone looked like me trying to solve for something, it wouldn't go far. But I need everyone around the table kind of picking it apart to get to the best solution. And so that is the ultimate reason. It's the right thing to do, it's good for business. But it's also, if you want to attract the diversity that you want, that's also the way you do it. You can't have like a monotone look anywhere and expect to have a lot of diversity coming to, because representation matters. And people want to see people that look like them in order to know that they can succeed. So, thanks.
That's just my question. Thank you.
Go ahead.
When you were talking earlier about the career board of directors, when you first like made your first career board of directors, like what were the like obvious like characteristics or things you were looking for in like the people you wanted to be?
Yeah.
part of?
I will answer that. I will answer that. I look for people that took an interest in me. And I learned that whole career board of directors thing before I even had my first job. And I didn't say part of my career journey was Red Fukuosaki had a huge impact. So Red is there was this organization called National Society of Minorities in Hospitality. I was a part of the board, and it got me to eventually to be the intern for Steve Mera, which was the CEO of Sun. And that experience opened up a wide opportunity that a lot of people never had the opportunity, where I was sitting in boardrooms, where he would take me to like the management committee. I would see his father and we would be in a room and he's like, the only way you're gonna get used to this world is if you're in it. And so he always kind of instilled in me to find people that were just smarter than me or myself, or that were in positions that he wanted to be. And typically people will just like say yes. They're not gonna say no. I've not heard anyone saying no, I will not share any wisdom with you. Because people like talking about themselves. They do. They just naturally like talking about themselves. And if you give them and stroke their ego, they'll. So it's almost like if you have a career path that you want, pick out the people in that company or other people like even professors or what have you that can give you some really good insight because they can help you. And just the difference the different perspectives help you kind of meld in something that's the best decision for you.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I have a question reflecting on this idea of wisdom. So reflecting back upon your time at JMU,
Yes.
what words of wisdom would you offer for students who feel as though they are the only or feel as though they are struggling with this idea of belonging and feeling included?
That's tricky for me. Because I can only give the examples that I gave, like the two halves of like my experience at JMU. And I intend, because I could have gone to a historically black college if I wanted to, but I didn't. Because I knew that life wasn't just, again, the same people that look like me. And so I knew coming into a certain degree that I would have to deal with, understand how to deal with others. I think the piece for me was, there's a great lesson that can be learned here that you can take to life. And I know that because of the things that I went through in corporate settings, it's natural for me. I don't think it's right, but I think it's natural for me. And I'm not saying that JMU doesn't have an opportunity to be more inclusive, but it has helped me. What I would say is that you're not alone. I gave clear examples in many different instances where that kind of showed up. But I think the friendships, the piece when that those words happened and we had that come to Jesus meeting, that was like, and Raymond was a part of it. Raymond was a part of that. Just having understanding of perspectives of different people, of where they come from, and not judging. Because we all have our baggage and the filters and the things that we as like young, at that time, young people kind of still linger on what your parents did. And all, but you have to kind of grow into yourself. And so I think those are conversations with others. Even though sometimes I had to put myself out there more then, but that was part of the experiment anyway, because I could have gone somewhere else. So it was almost like, yes, it's going to happen. So you just need to figure out how do you navigate, but also for the others to understand that you're an outlier, and it's kind of hard to be black and gay on campus, really. Seriously, that's a lot. And so just to understand and empathize with others, it's two sides of the story. You just can't come in here thinking like, okay, everyone will love, but then the other side has to understand, okay, well, we all are different, and like, say hello. That doesn't cost you.
Can you share some concrete examples of ways that you're promoting and making changes in your company?
In globally, in the US?
I don't know, you tell me.
Okay, so then we have a strategy that's based on creating regional action plans around the world. And so I went through this entire exercise with the CEO, with the leadership team, and looking at employee engagement data to figure out where we had the greatest opportunity as a company to figure out. And so what it showed was where we needed to park and sit for a while and kind of do a lot more work is around inclusion, education, so that muscle, inclusion, education, and awareness, as well as creating an environment where everyone can reach their greatest potential. Now that shows up differently in different parts of the world. So in the US, I could be talking about ethnic backgrounds, I could be talking about gender. Gender is a global topic. I could be talking about in Asia about LGBT equality, where it's like a taboo topic, and we're talking about marriage equality, and we're talking about, those types of things. Or I could be in the Middle East, or Middle East region, where we're talking about part of the Middle East is South Africa, and part of the apartheid kind of our stance on helping to support the backdrop of everything that happened with apartheid, there are standards that you have to have around hiring so many people of this community and having them as suppliers, because they're so far behind because they never had the opportunity. We're doing some of that stuff. In Latin America, I could be looking at, career opportunities that are outside the payments industry as well as the technology space, because we want new thinking, because we want to be in different spaces of, finding sources for money. So they might be coming from, the educational background. They could be coming from somewhere that's not traditional to where we normally hire. So all of those things kind of equate. If you have a map of the globe, we're doing different stuff, different places. But the key for me in all of this stuff, centrally within the organization, from an HR perspective, when I say pulling apart stuff, in order for you to do any of this work, you need a diverse workforce. You just have to have a diverse workforce for any of the stuff to work. And so what I look at is I pull apart the recruitment process and say, what do we need to do to be more inclusive in our recruiting efforts? Why should anyone of diverse background or anyone want to work for your company? Do we go to places where you can find diversity? That could be one. Talent development and promotion around talent reviews, around looking at, in conversations with leaders, where are you putting their talent? Why do all of these people seem to be the smart people and these people over here at the bottom end of the rung, and they all kind of look alike? Why is that happening? So having discussions around that, as well as engagement within the organization. So most companies have employee engagement surveys where you can pick it apart, where I can say, give me it by these groups, geographies, and are there disparities in the way these people are experiencing the company versus others? And so it's all of those. So there's global strategy, and then there's some stuff that I'm working on nitty gritty in the center around our people strategy that also needs some help in the work. So it's system work as well as topic work that we're doing around the company. Did that make sense?
Question about that.
Yes.
So you said, in the Middle East, you might try to fill quota. How do you heal that line between being a quota filler and being an inclusive business?
Oh, yeah. So there are some government regulations, depending on where you are in the world, that you have to. And that is not my go-to at all. The one in South Africa is because there is a huge disparity of people not being able to participate in that economy because they don't have jobs. And because of that whole mess that happened, they are trying to push as much as they can in order to do that. Now, I'm not for quotas. I'm just not. I mean, after the interview, I'm not, because I think it sends the wrong message. Because at the end of the day, what I'm looking for is the best talent. And I know the best talent comes in many different forms and shapes and sizes, but have you found it? And I think it also sends a bad message, because if it's known that you're doing that, you're just here because you're quota. And I don't have to pay attention to you. But if we went to the places to make sure that we found the best talent, you can't argue with that. And so that's the thing. These are world challenges. In the US, I'm not doing the quota thing. In some parts of the world, because they're so antiquated, that's a first step that they have to do. You know? Yes.
When it comes to making these efforts at a local, state, national, global level, how do you find that balance between being that change and making that difference versus taking too much on and then just giving too much of yourself out there?
Oh, yes. I did that at Star, and I found that it backfired. And so that's a lesson learned not to do. And so what I will say is that when I was doing this work globally, when I first started at Star Hotels, it's a global company. They told me to blow it up and put it back together again. But I went out and said, thou shalt do this. And I went out there and said, we don't do this. No one was behind me, and I put like so much stuff out there. It's like, what the heck is he doing? And I learned my lesson because I fell on my face, quite honestly. And so it was through collaboration with the regional presidents, because there's a CEO, and typically in most companies there are people that are responsible for large regions within the company. So I would work with the region and their leadership team in my evolution of life in doing this work to figure out what's most impactful to them. Not me going out saying this is what you're going to do. What's most impactful to you that's going to help you with your goals and your objectives? And focus on one or two things and not 10 things. Because our natural gravitation is to do this and to do that and to do that. No, just focus on one or two things for 1 or 2 years, make some progress, and then we move on to something else. Because if you don't, you're not going to get anything done. Yes?
What do you think of cancel culture right now?
Oh, that's a good question.
Everybody hear that question?
Yeah. What do I think about cancel culture? Well, my gut reaction when I hear that is that there's something in society where we have become so polarized that we're unwilling to hear each other. And I think that is a symptom of cancel culture, is that you're not willing to hear the other side. And I kind of go back to the story around, I could have canceled my friends out because I heard something that I didn't like and they didn't come rescue me. But I loved them. And so it was more of, how do you first understand someone, to understand where they are? And sometimes that helps. Sometimes that helps. If we go canceling out everything, you're going to be an island of one. And how far is that going to be? Yes. Oh, Dean Busey has to be first.
You touched on advertising a little bit, and I've noticed lately it's like advertising is a competition for who can be the most diverse in their advertising. Is that just me, or is that actually happening?
Yeah.
It's like you see it, and it was an all of a sudden thing.
Yeah.
To me.
Well, it's also tied, well, I think you see things that are tied to money. And so a lot of companies are waking up to the fact that in order for you to remain relevant on a global stage, you need to make sure that you have tapped out every market. You need to make sure that you are showing that I want this person also to buy my product or buy my widget or buy my service. And so I don't think we're in such it's either we're in a woke society or it's like I've closed off myself and I don't want anything. I just want to keep what I'm doing, or it's become like, damn, like everyone wants everyone's business, which is great. But I think when you're doing marketing and advertising, what you are doing and showing nice pictures of diverse folks, but does it live within the company? So if I'm putting out an ad with this Benetton, is an old brand, I don't know if any of you know this brand, because they used to have ads and everyone, like, it was like a diverse, like, magazine, like, everyone was like, you know, if it doesn't resonate with how you operate as a company in your value system, and so the ad is just the ad, but like behind it, it's still hollow, and you don't see anyone that looks like those people in the company, that's when you get called on the carpet. So it has to be authentic. Whatever they're doing, it has to be authentic because it will fight for themselves. There was something over there.
So, playing off the cancel culture question, how do you balance executives in your company who can't distinguish between being too sensitive as a society to everything versus the reality of something that is actually, discriminatory or non-inclusive? Because that is a challenge for all executives, because you work in an environment where you establish relationships, and then you say one thing, and one person hears it, and it's taken the wrong way, but that's not why.
Exactly. That's why inclusion education and awareness training is so important. And I know, well, that's one thing, but I also have a team of people called crisis management to clean up crisis management, communications, to clean up the stuff when it happens. You know what I'm saying? So there's many different forms of like, how many layers do you want to know? Because there's behind the door and there's behind the door of how we clean this up. And so, but it begins with inclusion leadership training and making sure that the person is aware of some of the things that they might have as bias in the way that they think. And some people just, I mean, I could make a mistake and say something crazy because, you know, I made a mistake. But how do you kind of fall fast and then quickly save yourself? And so we do have crisis management that does that, but in some cases it works, in some cases it doesn't. And so that's the scary part about being in cancel culture, is that you have to really think about what you say before you say it. That's why I write everything down.
So personally, from your experience, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you're like, oh man, this person being too sensitive, but you represent the ideal policy making of the company?
Give me an example of it. Give me an example.
I mean, just as you say something and someone's offended, it's nothing that is over the line, but
Oh yeah, so I have that all the time with different topics globally, and you know how a company has a stance on something and someone doesn't agree with the stance. It depends on how far your CEO wants to go, because they, at the end of the day, it's their shot. And so what I do is we go to the line of like, this is what the organization is, our value system, and here's what we're saying. Like LGBT equality. A lot of people don't agree and don't want to have a conversation about that, but we kind of go back to our value system that everyone matters. And so if we're having a conversation about LGBT equality and we're signing a pledge for marriage equality in Hong Kong, it's the decision that we make because we said at the base of who we are, we value everyone. Whether you agree with it or not, that is the deal. And so there are different nuances and flavors of how far we go with that, but we're very careful about what we will stick a pin in and say that we're for something just to make sure that we don't have as much backlash. Because it's a balance. There's no, you have to balance, you know, what are our investors asking us? What are our employees asking us? What are our customers asking us? You make an informed decision on that. And it's not a calculate, there's no formula. It's about heads being in the room to figure out what's the best strategic move for us right now. And it's not a formula that if I'm talking about LGBT, and there's another topic around will I talk about Palestine or will I talk about Israel, that's a different formula that you have to have different characters to figure out. So there's not one cut answer, but we have to like, yeah. The gentleman in the back, because he has been raising his hand. Yes, you. Yeah.
So, like, what would you say is like your number one like source of knowledge in terms of like diversity and inclusion?
Source of knowledge. I mean, it evolves every day based on stuff that I learned. It's through experience, quite honestly. It's through experience. There hasn't been one thing that I can point to say that, oh, I got it because of this. No, it's every day being put into fire drills and having to work myself out of it. Trial by fire, every day, literally, is how I've been able to do that. Plus talking to other inclusion and diversity leaders. Not just inclusion and diversity leaders, but also just leaders within the organization to figure out what's relevant to them. Because this work kind of dies on the vine if you're just talking about diversity for diversity's sake and it's not actually helping the business. So talking to business leaders that run a P&L, that have these things that they want to think about, that's been very helpful. But it literally is going back to playbooks around, this is kind of the situation I was in 15 years ago or 10 years ago, and how do I apply that experience to solving this problem? And that's the only way that I can get it. Hey, she's actually one of my mentees.
In terms of the initiatives that you and your team have implemented, how do you measure social impact and its effectiveness?
Social impact, meaning ESG? Or how would you describe it?
The impact that the
So, I mean, all the stuff that was rattling off about the global stuff, so there's certain numbers that you can track. So we're able to track globally, female women representation at all levels of the company, and depending on where you are in the US, we can track ethnicity and things like that. But also, we can track, engagement. Our engagement of our employees, has that gone up or gone down? So anything that you can track, you can show to from. It went from this to that. But some of it is ambiguous around, I'm trying to think of one of them that is ambiguous. That's not as easy to track. So quite honestly, LGBT is hard to track because a lot of people don't want to identify themselves. Even to this day, 2022, people don't want to identify themselves. But the way that we show our impact is making sure that we show up in LGBT-related events, to hiring events and things like that, even if they don't track it, if they don't check the box. But we are in the community doing things, and that's hopefully trying to get us to a point to say, if someone asks you the question of, what have you done for this community? Here are the proof points, but sometimes you can't easily track the number because they're not willing to do that. Same thing with people with disabilities. They don't want to be identified in a system that I'm different in that way. And so we have to go out to recruitment places that will hire persons with disability, neurodiversity, people with autism scale. All of those things, going out and making an effort to be very clear, I'm intentionally going to this community, are the proof points that we have. So some you can track, some you have to show the step that you've done in order to invite the community to your company. Yes?
Maybe to tie some of the things that people have asked here, you also did a study at Starwood, if I'm not wrong, around women moving into being general managers and how you work at Starwood to maybe break down some walls and barriers for women that were questioning that move.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe that might be a tangible thing that you might want to listen to and hear about what you did to break down some of those.
So one of the things that I did, and that was a while back, so thanks for remembering. The brief that I got was we're losing a lot of women at director level within Starwood Hotels in their path to becoming a general manager of the hotel. So they're the CEO of the hotel. And what we found is that I had to have conversations with all of the very high potential women that were on succession plans to be general managers and saying, over the next 2 levels in your career, you can be a general manager. One, the exercise of having a conversation with someone to say, we think that you have runway, was tremendous. Just having a conversation that you have potential was amazing. And then they said there were certain things around, I didn't have a network because the people that are in those roles didn't look like me, so they wouldn't invite me into the situation. Work-life balance. I have a husband, and if I was told that I need to move to another hotel to manage it as a part of my career growth, would he allow me to do that? I mean, would he allow me? Oh my God. The other piece was around, I didn't know the steps that I needed to take in order to get to the career path. I can't be in HR and expect to be a general manager. I need operations where I need to be like at the front desk. I need to do those things. They didn't know that. And so there was a strategy that we created in order to make sure that if we knew this information, going back to those women and giving them opportunities to solve for those things. So whether that be, someone that comes by and says, here's your career, here's what the steps you need to take in order to get to the next level. Having conversations as a family with folks and say, we think that she can be the next general manager, and having family conversations around, is this something that everyone can be bought into? If you are, as a company, we're going to do these things and make good on those things. the work-life balance of the 24/7, because everyone, all the women are like, I don't want that job because it's 24, and I got kids. It's a 24/7 job. That's not true. What we found is that the men that were general managers were obsessed with saying that they were at the hotel for 24/7, when it doesn't take 24/7 to do the job. And everyone was like, well, what are you doing that you need to be there for 24/7? And so it was a myth that we had to dispel. Not to say that they didn't have a hard job, but it wasn't as to the extreme of the exclusiveness of like, you have to be married and like tied to the desk. It wasn't. And so breaking those things down. So there's many different things that we did, but we triaged it, and because of that, we saw female GMs go from like, we increased it by 35%, I think, when I left. Because we had done those action steps to kind of clear things up, which was amazing. So thank you for sharing.
I have a question. Go ahead.
You want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead. I have a question.
I was just gonna say, in conclusion, what is your best tip for people who, let's say, like I'm in class and I see these other people and I don't have a lot in common with them. What is your best tip for getting them to be more included with you or with your group, or because I noticed like as a transfer student, I just transferred from last semester. Jamie is very like everybody has a friend groups, you know, and it's very like hard to get into that. So how do you make it more inclusive? Like just as a person, like just one person myself.
What I found for me was a few things. Was joining like groups, like finding out where the social groups that were around to do. I found my entire social network at CCM. I'm not Catholic. I'm not Catholic. I went to a party, literally, that was part of the beer and wine thing. I went to a party and came back with 12 friends. No, seriously, I did. It's more of, you know, you put yourself in situations where you can meet other people that might not be part of like school group thing. Like if there was a tennis club or a tennis clinic or something like that, do that. It's the small things, or just like saying hello in class, and like you never know what would happen. But I had a conversation because we had one of our roommates that was a transfer student, and I think that's how they kind of got integrated, as well as myself, was around doing stuff and kind of just putting myself out there. It's hard. It really is. It really is hard. But I had a great time because I put myself out there, and people were really nice. They were.
I kind of have a follow-up.
Yes.
What if you're already in the group and you want to include other people? How do you suggest it?
Pull them in.
But like, there's just like such a stimulus nowadays on like talking to strangers is not normal. Like talking to somebody, like just saying hi to someone in here that I don't know is like kind of looked upon as weird, or people think that it's looked upon as weird.
Is that a COVID thing?
Like,
Is that like?
it probably could be, or like just to do with social media in general and like how that affects
So,
everything.
well, how do you normally meet friends?
Clubs,
So,
groups. That's the only reason why I have friends now is because I joined it.
I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out because I'm just too old. I'm just trying to figure out because the old way was just to say hello. No, seriously. And I didn't know that was creepy to just say hello.
Well, it's not creepy, but it's just like nobody, like I go out for my day and I live the same day every day I go to class. I don't talk to anybody new, I talk to my group that's in my class. And like, I'm just like, you break that routine.
So you have to change. So from a hiring perspective, listen, from a hiring perspective, when I interview people and they cannot communicate with me in an interview, they don't get the job. So you have to jump off the diamond. I'm serious. Like when I went to JMU, I had to adjust to people being nice. Like that, this is 94 through 98, so I'm old, and there was no social media. So like I would walk from McGraw-Long to Taylor Hall, and people would say hello to me, and they were like, who are you? Like, I don't know you, right? So totally different for you now, right? But when you enter the job world, the person who's hiring you is expecting you to be outgoing. Because if you're not outgoing, you're a weakness to what they're trying to accomplish because they cannot connect with you, Now, it's their responsibility to do more than what they're used to connect with you because things are changing and people are evolving. But you have to show the willingness to do that. So if you want to pull people in, like Randall said, pull them in. And if you're afraid of what they're going to say, don't worry about it. Just pull in the
It's
next
the
person.
fear of being rejected that a lot of people don't like. And that part, I think, is an easy place for you to learn here that it's okay. Because people are going to say no, or I don't care, or whatever. But then you will find that one person that could be the best friend forever. So it's almost like you have to put yourself out there. I know it's hard. It really is. Because I was just saying it. Like, I had to be the one that initiate some things with the friends as well as the professors and stuff like that. But sometimes you have to do that. Because you are incorporating yourself into a social structure that had already been formed. And so pushing yourself out there, and again, going to the gym. I was just over at the gym, I was at the gym earlier today. Just being there and just working out and stuff like that, it was easy to just say hello to someone. Even though they were in their little groups and cliques and stuff like that, and it's hard, but you still have to do it. Because that's the only way you're going to meet people. And that whole exercise is going to follow you throughout life, where you're going to be in situations where you're going to know anyone that you need to actually go out and make the first step.
Start having real conversations.
Well, I actually am an extrovert, but I was just saying more as like what are some tips that you can do to to just kind of break that ice? And sorry for asking like 40 questions in the last one.
It's interesting how you guys have come to life towards the end.
I know. We could get the room for another hour or so.
Oh, you have a question?
I kind of had something to add
Yes.
to it. Just growing up in a household that like my parents were kind of leaned against social media because they wanted me to have relationships with people and know how to have a relationship with people.
Right.
Being weird, especially in today's day and age, is okay. Just literally, like, you kind of have to just get past it. I am so introverted, I am shaking right now.
Yeah.
I'm so nervous.
It's okay.
But just you kind of have to. It's literally mind over matter. Like you just kind of have to leap off the. Just leap into the water. Just jump.
It's kind of interesting because I had an internship, and I'm not saying like this is like the answer, but I had an internship in sales. And I remember the first, when I was talking about those crazy like jobs that you get on your nerves and you feel like you're crappy. I remember I was in the hotel. I was a hotel sales intern, and they gave me all of the contracts from the previous few years to call up again to see if we needed more business. No. And it was like 20 no's. And it was the most terrifying thing ever because I was like, oh my God, these people are just, they hate me. But it was through those experiences, no just became, okay, whatever. And so it's those instances where you're put in those situations that it stings at first, but after the 100th, whatever.
Thank you.
Can I ask how many new people you've met this evening?
Maybe like one, but I didn't ask her name. We just were like in the group. And we
I think everyone knows you.
COB is the new CCM.
So part of it is, if you think about it, like if you come to events like this, come to these things with intention, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to set a goal for myself. I'm going to meet 2 new people, or whatever. It could just be one person, right? Doesn't matter. I don't care if it happens when you're walking out the door, but again, challenge yourself if these things are like net new for you.
Yes.
How do you know a company's hiring you because of your qualifications or because of your color of skin?
Oh gosh, I don't know any company is going to say, oh, because you have olive skin, she's in. No,
No, but they really want to have the diversity. They're advertising the diversity when they really, you know.
But here's the thing: if they are organizations that are focused on diversity, the principal in the beginning is the best person gets the job. And we just know the best person to come in many different forms and shapes and sizes and colors and backgrounds. But no one is going to put someone in a role when you have an organization that's trying to make money and put someone just in a role just because of what they look like. And if you feel like they are doing that, that's not the organization. It really isn't. Because this work is about finding the best, and we just know that the best comes in different forms.
But you also said that the best may not have had the opportunity, and so how do you tack through? How do you
That's why you
filter
have,
that?
that's why you have many different things, it's not just one thing, it's around like having a diverse hiring. It's around making sure that as you're developing your pipeline, you have a diverse pipeline of people that you're developing to get to certain levels in the company. It's about going to universities and sitting down with the university faculty as well as, I guess, the advisors to say, here's what I'm looking for, and can you coach and develop these people in order to do these things? And I need to have that rich diversity. And so, again, everyone is not the same starting point. No one's at the same starting point. But it's around how do you make sure that you're including everyone as you kind of go to these places to find the talent.
And just to round out, just to answer your question, also it's for us to know our value and our worth and to be able to stand in that. And when you have that belief and faith in that, the rest, it doesn't bother you, it doesn't phase you. So it's gaining that confidence in yourself and what you're bringing to the table. That's all you need.
And it's kind of weird that I'm saying this, but who cares?
Yes.
Who cares? It don't matter.
I think it's like what I've learned, well, especially from hearing from everybody's input, is that like it's all about perspective. If you see yourself as being, scared to talk to people, then you're gonna be scared to talk to people. But like if you have like the confidence to just go in and if somebody says no or like is mean to you or just like holds you, then it's like whatever. You're still your person, you still have your values.
Well, yes, and I also know that I've been in places that I've gotten certain stuff because of what I had, or something that 2 years ago that was not even relevant, and all of a sudden now it's the new thing. And so you never know how people get to certain levels in organizations. At a certain point in an organization, it's not about you being smart. It's not about you being the best worker. It's about the networks that you've created that will get you there. And the role that I have is to make sure that as many people of diversity are able to get to that level to be a part of that network within a broader organization.